still and watched calmly the extermination of a race brave and strong enough to have held the British Empire at bay for 2 long years.
But nothing was doing. The Committee of English Ladies made their progress through the concentration camps of South Africa, and though there were 2 distinguished feminists amongst them, they were all proven backers of the British establishment when it came to conquering the 2 Boer republics.
And what of Emily? Well, she simply booked an independent passage on the Avondale Castle, sailing for South Africa, under her own steam, as it were. The Avondale Castle arrived in Cape Town on October the 27th, 1901. As Emily was preparing to land, a Royal Navy lieutenant named Lingham came on board.
He announced that he had to speak to Miss Hobhouse, excuse me, and this strange interview took place. Lieutenant Lingham said, "I have to inform you, Miss Hobhouse, that you are to remain on the Avondale Castle under strict supervision, and that you are to hold no communication with anybody ashore, either by word or letter, and that it is proposed that you should leave for Britain on the ship leaving on Wednesday afternoon. You, sir, will be held responsible under martial law for guarding Miss Hobhouse, and you are not to allow her to leave the ship."
And who, Mr. Lingham, has issued these orders?
Colonel Cooper, acting commandant in Cape Town.
And from whom has Colonel Cooper had his orders?
Of that, I can say nothing.
Mr. Lingham, when I left England, there was no martial law in Cape Town. And it seems incredible to me that after so long a voyage, I'm not even allowed to land. Maybe I could land elsewhere in South Africa?
No, madam.
Have you brought any charge against me?
No, madam.
Have you a warrant?
No, Miss Hobhouse.
Then all I can do is write to your Colonel Cooper. Will you carry it to him?
Yes, madam.
Thank you.
And Emily addressed the colonel.
I could understand the rigors of martial law being applied to me if I had in the past taken, or even now intended to take, a political part of any kind. But this I have never done. Both in South Africa and in England, my words and my work have been purely and consistently philanthropic in character. I have left politics severely alone. And my intentions in revisiting South Africa was simply to carry on this philanthropic work.
And then Emily, knowing that all-powerful Kitchener was at the root of her predicament, began to play every feminine card she could muster.
I do not feel equal to the strain of an immediate return voyage which you offer me, nor the alternate of remaining a prisoner on board the Avondale Castle. I enclose a letter which I earnestly ask you to convey to the Governor, Healy Hutchinson, and also one to Lord Milner and one to Lord Kitchener. It cannot but seem to me that the summary arrest of an English woman bound on works of charity without warrant of any kind or stated offense is a procedure that requires explanation. I am, sir, yours faithfully, Emily Hobhouse.
Then Colonel Cooper called at the ship to see Emily. Do you not think that it would be best, Miss Hobhouse, to leave quietly by the ship which is sailing for Britain this afternoon.
I am not equal to it and need rest.
What then are your plans?
My plans are to go ashore and do my work. However, under the circumstances, I shall await replies to my letters from the Lords Milner and Kitchener, whom I hope are unaware of my arrest. However, rest assured that if it would add to the honor or to the safety of England that I should be imprisoned, I am willing. I ask only that it might be in a land prison.
A telegram arrived from Field Marshal Lord Kitchener. Emily, having a fair idea what it contained, murmured,
I am too unwell to read or take in the contents of this message.
Young Lieutenant Lingham, who was present, read it. In agreement with a recommendation made by Lord Milner, Emily Hobhouse is ordered for immediate deportation. Kitchener.
I am not strong enough to entertain the idea.
Miss Hobhouse, you will have to leave on the ship which is sailing for England this afternoon. Otherwise, I am ordered to use force.
I cannot help what you do. That is your affair. I can only judge what is right for myself to do. Why don't you take me on shore and hang me? Why torment me so? However, I still have faith enough in English men and English officers to believe that they will not force a sick woman on a long journey against her will. And I shall retain that faith for as long as possible.
2 British soldiers were then led in, led by a military doctor who said, "Will you yield of your own free will? Otherwise, here are the soldiers."
I will not take one step voluntarily towards that ship.
Madam, do you want to be taken like a lunatic?
Sir, the lunacy is on your side, and with those whose commands you obey. If you had any manhood in you, you would go and leave me alone. Please, please, afford me the same respect you would like shown to your wives and mothers under similar conditions. Please.
But Emily Hobhouse was carried physically on board the departing ship which duly sailed for England.
In Britain, Emily joined her very brave Liberal friends, and they continued to blast against the wholesale murder in South Africa.
And the creators of the war, Joseph Chamberlain and Alfred Milner, and the military might of empire personified by Lord Kitchener, were all apparently going off balance. Chamberlain stated, "The time's come, or is coming, where measures of greater severity may be necessary." Milner replied to Chamberlain, "I feel that the present moment, with the concentration camp scandal hanging over our heads, is, well, not a good time for measures of greater severity. Moreover, I greatly doubt whether, as things stand now, that anything will hasten the end of the war. We will just have to catch the remaining Boers. Nothing else will do." And Kitchener, here at Melrose House, is military headquarters in Pretoria. "The Boers are quite impossible people to deal with. And the only way will be to wear them out by continually catching their men and rendering the country uninhabitable. And a little later, his mind was, well... Fighting to a finish in this country and with these people means extermination. And that is a very long and tiring business. If you think that someone else could do better out here, I hope you will not hesitate for one moment in replacing me. And soon Milner appeared to be going right round the bend. The theory that all the weaker Boer children being dead, the rate of death would fall off, is not so far borne out by the facts. I take it that the stronger Boer children must be dying now, and that they will all be dead by the, well, the spring of 1903. Only I shall not be there to see, as the continuance of the present state of affairs for another month or two will undoubtedly blow us all out of the water.
Soon after Emily Hobhouse's return to Great Britain, the number of deaths in the concentration camps in South Africa began to fall. She, Emily, had seen the danger of massive mortality before anyone else. She had gone personally to the suffering, and she had banged a very loud drum until it echoed and re-echoed around the world. Improvements were made, and the deaths decreased. All honor to the truly brave and compassionate.
The Boer army, from both the Orange Free State and the Transvaal, were never destroyed by the British. At the end of almost 3 years, there were still about 20,000 fighting Boers on active service, albeit hungry and dressed in rags. The British Empire had sent a total of about 450,000 imperial soldiers against them. That is, getting on for 500,000.
But the Boer nation was seriously threatened with annihilation, genocide. And so the astonishing Boer leaders, President Steyn, President Burgers, who is now standing in for Creer, and the generals, Louis Botha, Jan Smuts, Delarey, Christian de Wet, amongst others, rode into a place called Vereniging and faced the Lords Milner and Kitchener. And there they lay down their arms. And here, on the 31st of May, 1902, in Melrose House in Pretoria, they signed the Peace of Vereniging. Emily Hobhouse wrote a book about the Boer women and children who had suffered because of the war. It is a very careful labor of historical fact. She called it The Brunt of the War and Where It Fell. And her introduction to the book ended, "Their innocent histories ought to become fully known and widely understood, and so implant a hatred of war and a shrinking from its horrors, which shall issue in a ripened determination amongst the kingdoms of the world to settle future differences by methods more worthy of civilized men." And the dedication read, "To the women of South Africa, whose endurance of hardship, resignation in loss, independence under coercion, dignity in humiliation, patience through pain, and tranquility amidst death, kindled the reverent appreciation of the writer and has excited the sympathy of the world." And she stipulated that all royalties from the sale of the book should be paid to the refurnishing fund for the reconstruction of Boer homes.
Now that the war was finished, Emily was, at long last, no longer alone. As the Boer people turned to peace, they also turned to the woman who had worked for them. In their appalling national distress, it seemed that the entire nation reached out to the English woman. It was an astonishing human phenomenon.
And so the Boer women, the Afrikaners, collected money to enable Emily to buy a cottage at St. Ives. From there, she could look out across the great Atlantic Ocean, joining her country to theirs. During August 1902, the three Boer generals, Louis Botha, Delarey, and Christian de Wet, came to England to collect money for their destitute people. At their request, Emily was on the pilot boat that steamed to meet them at Southampton. During their journey to London, the gallant Boers sat on either side of Emily. To them, she represented the best spirit of Great Britain. And now they were wise enough to focus on that spirit, and that spirit alone.
Early in 1903, Emily returned to South Africa, and hiring a simple wagon and with a Boer ex-prisoner of war as her guide, she traveled vast distances visiting the wrecked farms and gathering meticulous notes of urgent needs, etc. General de Wet invited Emily to be a guest in what remained of his farmhouse. He then asked her to accompany him to the first People's Gathering at the town of Heidelberg, a sort of national reunion. She was placed in a seat of honor, again amongst the Boer leaders, and General Botha introduced her to the vast Boer gathering. They cheered her.
And then Emily met Jan Smuts. And he asked her to honor him by staying in his house. Emily wrote a letter to her brother about Smuts. I wish you could meet him. He's so clever and cultivated and full of fun. And yet underneath, he's heartbroken at the loss of his country. I prophesy a great future for Smuts.
Returning to England, Emily formed the Boer Home Industries Aid Society. She raised money, returned to South Africa, and set up schools right across the two countries. Primarily, they wove cloth.
As the years went by, Emily worked through Jan Smuts to help the Boer people. She nagged him endlessly with good advice, and he patiently wrote to her as, "My dear friend."
But her health was deteriorating fast. She developed arthritis, and she suffered a heart attack. In the year 1913, the Boer people had constructed a monument at Bloemfontein, dedicated to the memory of the women and children who had died in the concentration camps. Ex-President Steyn of the old Orange Free State, on behalf of the nation, came to an extraordinary decision. He invited the Englishwoman, Emily Hobhouse, to unveil it. Emily accepted the honor and sailed again for Africa. But now she was extremely ill and very weak. She traveled northward through the Cape towards Bloemfontein, but at Beaufort West, she was too weak to continue. or she couldn't face the emotional ordeal, and very quietly turned away. But she had prepared a speech, and the words have survived.
Alongside the honor we pay the sainted dead, forgiveness must find a place. I have read that when Christ said, "Forgive your enemies," it is not only for the sake of the enemy he said so, but for one's own sake. Because love is more beautiful than hate. As your tribute to the dead, bury unforgiveness and bitterness at the foot of this monument forever.
Finally, the list of her serious illnesses extended beyond even her ability to override them, and during the spring of 1926, Emily wrote,
I have all my life looked forward so greatly to death. The rest, the peace, the greatness of it.
She gave clear instructions that she wished her body to be cremated and for what remained to be buried in South Africa. The Boers heard her request, and her ashes were taken down the southern seas and from Cape Town northward to Bloemfontein. And at the foot of the great memorial to the women and children, Emily was buried.
Only 5 people have been awarded this so significant honor. Amongst them, President Steyn, General Christian de Wet, and Miss Emily Hobhouse. Jan Smuts spoke over the grave. We stood alone in the world, friendless among the people. The smallest nations ranged against the mightiest empire in the world. Then one small hand, the hand of a woman, was stretched out to us. At that darkest hour, when our entire race almost seemed doomed to extinction, she appeared as an angel, as a messenger from heaven. And strangest of all, she was an English woman.